Hey everybody, this month's episode of the Rahdo Talks Through podcast is brought to you by Honeybuzz Fall Flavors, which is available for pre-order now in regular and deluxe editions. And I have talked about Honeybuzz in the past. I even did a run-through. This is a fantastic, crunchy worker placement game about honeybees collecting the pollen, making the honey, and selling it to all the woodland critters. But this new expansion adds so much leaves and fruit that give you a lot more flexibility and variety, but more importantly, what really gets me excited are the modules that let you sacrifice, or I should say retire your worker bees to be able to lock in extra objective victory points. This is one of my favorite mechanisms of all time, and I cannot wait to try it in a game that was already absolutely fantastic. Like I said, it is available for pre-order now at honeybuzz.rahdo.com. There's a regular and a deluxe edition, and it looks cool. And welcome, everybody, to the April episode of the podcast where you ask the questions and we answer them. And actually, I should have gotten this up a bit sooner. Sorry it took so long. We actually recorded all of the Q&A section last week while we were still on the road in the RV, hanging out at Arches National Park in Utah. Although I don't think you get to see any of that in the background because it's just a tight video of us in the RV. But anyway, as always, there were some fun questions, some very challenging questions, some very thought-provoking questions, and folks, we can't do this without you. So for next month, be sure to send your questions to the email address questions@rahdo.com. Before we get going, because I've done this a week ago, some actual questions have come in since recording the main thing, and won't get to them until next month. I just want to apologize to Jack and Ben and Olivier and Victor. I've got your emails, guys, about various and sundry things, but the timing was just a bit off. We'll get to that next week, but hopefully, folks, you send a few more questions in just those because we need it. It's the fuel that keeps this podcast going. And without any further ado, let's get right to it. First, we're going to have the games questions, which this month there weren't really any good ones for Jen. So it's just me, and then Jen shows up for all the personal Q&A. So sit back and relax. We'll get right to it. Okay, everybody, let's get going. We're starting out today with some stuff from Daniel. Daniel, who wonders, is there a game designer whose games seem, to me, like they were made deliberately so that I would not like them? Mechanisms, not necessarily player count. I don't know. The first thing that pops into my head would probably be Bruno Cathala. It's so weird. He makes such wonderfully smart design decisions, but that he always insists in every game on just throwing in some completely useless take that stuff that just ruins the game for me and Jen. We just had that the other day in Sobek, the new 2-player game, where he, again, just threw in stuff where you can steal from each other for no reason. It in no way improves the game, and it just absolutely makes it worse. Just cheap, throwaway stuff, but he seems to love it, and I do not know why. It's such a shame. Seven Wonders has one of the greatest examples of, oh, look, it's military conflict, but it's done in a way that isn't really nasty or take that. But then as soon as Bruno Cathala works with Antoine Balzan, Seven Wonders Duel, hey, all of a sudden you can start torching your opponent's money and just throwing it away, which never existed before. So yeah, I'm gonna give that one to Cathala, and Bruno, knock it off. Again, you don't have to. If it's what you love, do what you love, buddy. Anyway, though, let's move on to Daniel's next question. Why do I think cooperative designers like to add randomness and chaos to their games? I don't mean some luck. I mean, here you are. Lose your turn, or lose all the stuff you've spent the entire game building up, or one player discards their hand and boom, you're heading into a death spiral through no fault of your own. Well, that sounds terrible. Those sound like terrible design decisions, and I don't think you should play those games, quite frankly. I don't see that kind of stuff happening. I mean, you don't get that kind of stuff in Pandemic. You don't get that kind of stuff in Gloomhaven. You don't get that kind of stuff in The Loop, or trying to think of really good cooperative games. The Crew. Skip an entire turn. That's not. Those are just bad design decisions. But And I don't know, Daniel, you're playing some crappy games, it sounds like. If you have specific examples, by all means, send a follow-up questions to questions@rahdo.com, and we can dig a little bit deeper into this, because I'm not sure that I'm seeing what you're seeing here. Okay, then let's move on to the next one. And hey, it happens to do with Seven Wonders. See, Daniel agrees with me and disagrees with Dan. So this is from last month when Dan and I don't remember what we were talking about. Oh, card drafting. Right. Daniel points out, you have to hate draft if everybody is at equal skill level. Yes, that was my argument. I was really surprised, quite frankly, that Dan has such a Dan is a very experienced gamer. I played several games with him while we were in Phoenix, and he was the best player at the table. He was beating Jen left and right, so he is no slouch. But it was still surprising to see him have such a casual attitude about card drafting games that, if he and I were playing a game, he's like, I'll just always take the best thing I can, and I don't care what my neighbor wants. Whereas me, okay, I'll take the best thing that's good for me that really hurts my neighbor. I will beat Dan. There's no two ways about it. If one player is hate drafting and the other player is not, that other player is losing. Unless really random luck falls their way. So anyway, I was really surprised that was Dan's attitude, but I guess, hey, if he's having fun, more power to him. And here's the deal. If nobody at the table is hate drafting, then it's fine. But as soon as one player is hate drafting, they are guaranteeing the player to their left is going to lose. But the thing is, they're going to up their chance of losing too if the player to the right isn't hate drafting. It's a circle of life, basically, a circle of hate drafting. But regardless, Daniel continues. Daniel also points out there's the potential of double hate drafting. What's that? It's when person one takes a slightly suboptimal card because they want to leave that one particular card to player two, because that would force player two to hate draft that card against player three. Oh my gosh, yes. That is high-level Seven Wonders play when you're thinking not only about the player to your immediate left, but the player beyond that as well. And, that's the best play as far as I'm concerned. Let's see. So, in essence, player one is hate draft against both player two and player three. Yeah, it looks like you don't really have a question there. But I agree with you, Daniel. Yes. Hate drafting for the win, and it's one of the few things that doesn't really bother me that much in terms of aggressive play. Which of course flies in the face of the first thing I pointed out. Anyway, though, number 4 from Daniel. What is preventing Spirit Island from being ranked higher for me and Jen? Just the game length, quite frankly. I think it's a fantastic game, but it is a big monster of a game. I imagine if Jen and I were to play it enough, we could get it down to where we could get it done in under 2 hours. But in our experience, it is a 2+ hour game for us. And the thing is, for us, generally speaking, we want co-op games to be, clocking in at 60 minutes, 90 minutes at the most, because playing a 2+ hour game that is competitive, where one player is going to win and one player is going to lose, it's not our favorite thing, but we're okay with that. There's plenty of long, and I know a lot of people think, it's not long until it's 4 hours, but hey, for us, more than 2 hours is getting on the long side for us. In a competitive game, that can still be okay. But in a cooperative game, where if we just sat down for 2 hours and 15 minutes, and then we both lose against the game, that's a non-starter for us. It is very, very rare. In fact, I can only think of one game that falls under the aegis of, we will accept that, and that was Gloomhaven. And here's the reality. Gloomhaven, we just played at standard difficulty level, and we effectively almost never, ever lost. We really should have pumped it up to the next level of difficulty, so the game was more of a challenge for us, but we didn't want to put in 2+ hours into a session and have a decent shot of losing. For us, a cooperative game, if it goes over an hour and both of us lose, we feel like we wasted our time. Whereas we don't feel that way in a competitive game because one of us is going to win. So that's really my only fault with Spirit Island. And I don't know, heck, maybe by now there is some kind of express variant version with all the expansions and whatnot that come out over the years. I've only ever played just base Spirit Island, but that's kind of how it comes down for us. Okie dokie. Next up, we've got Frank, who is really enjoying the Rahdo Rankenings. In my last episode, though, I indicated that I probably will never finish the series, given the way Pub Meeple works, and that's a real shame, says Frank. Have I considered changing it up and ranking only my top 50 or my top 100, meaning which I could finish and also showcase games that we care about, since most of us probably don't care as much about lower ranked games. Here's the deal. Frank, I'm not that worried about it, because when I say I don't know that I'll ever finish it, that is because at some point, and I should say, for folks who don't know, the Rankening show is something I do every couple of weeks where I use the Pub Meeple website. They have this ranking engine where you can put in a list of, well, in my case, I've put in a list of 400 games. And it will give me those games and say, Game X compared to Game 32. Game 47 compared to Game X2, whatever. And it's just like game by game, making me rank individual ones. Do I want to play that one or that one, that one or that one? And the thing is, at the beginning of this, and probably, I don't know exactly how long, but for the first third of this process, Frank, it's never going to re-ask me about a game. It's only going to be every single time asking me about new games that it hasn't put yet. Once it's done an initial ranking of everything, which again, I'm going to assume is probably 20 or 30% of the way into the process, then I'm going to start seeing repeats. I'm going to see it ask me about the same game again, and but compared to a different game or whatever. And that when I say I don't think I'm ever going to make it, I don't think I'm going to make it past that. My intention, at the very, very least, is to keep on doing it until it has asked about all 400 of those games, because that's 400 games I can talk about and tell people about that they've never heard of before. But in kind of a fun way where I'm comparing A to B and all of that. Now, don't get me wrong, we'll see when we get there if I decide if I want to keep on going and start seeing repeats. Because the thing is, once it starts repeating, in theory, the show could go much quicker, because for each game, I don't have to spend 3 minutes explaining what it is. I can just say, oh, this versus that. Boom, this versus that. And, maybe it'll speed up and maybe I'll see it all the way through. I don't know. Time will tell. But my intention is, for the very least, to make it to long enough to where all the games have been talked about. That's my current thinking anyway. And continuing on, what do we got here? We've got Jeff. Jeff says, for starters, the term replayability gets tossed around quite a bit, frequently followed by variability of setup. There are plenty of examples, however, of games that do not feature any variability in setup and are considered to be highly replayable due to the inordinate number of early, mid, and late game states that emerge. For example, Chess, Hive, Go, Tigers, Euphrates, name a few. Their replayability is born out of the high amount of depth in the game, not new setups with different tiles to look at, or variable powers, or asymmetric roles, branching narratives, etc. Those characteristics provide added content, which doesn't necessarily translate to replayability. I would completely agree with that. You could have a lot of variability, but the variability is so inconsequential and meaningless to where it doesn't even need to be there. And I've certainly seen that on some games where, oh wow, that's really cool that you've got, and wow, this is really just a different way to what do you call it? Shave the same cat. So yes, variability does not necessarily equal replayability. It's a strong indicator, though, certainly when it's done well. But continuing on, Jeff then adds, perhaps it's how we define replayability that differs from person to person. For me, says Jeff, it's about how much I want to come back and play the game over and over again. I've literally played thousands of games of cribbage, online and in person. It's replayable because I enjoy it and the interactions with people I've played with. I've played dozens of games of Crokinole because of the competitive atmosphere that brings our family together. So the question is, Jeff says, does variability in setup or otherwise equate replayability? Well, I've already answered that question. It's an indicator, but it is it does not it does not guarantee. It's not a guarantor. Alrighty, if not, perhaps we shouldn't conflate the two. Instead, just highlight the game's variability as a standalone trait. It's similar, I think, to those who use complexity and depth interchangeably. You know what, Jeff? I completely agree with you. You are entirely right. It probably should be called out separately, and there is no better parallel to the confusion around, oh, this game is really heavy because it's so complex. Well, that doesn't to me, depth is more important than complexity when you're talking about the overall weight of a game, and yet they're thrown around interchangeably, and you're right. The same thing is true for variability and replayability. All that said, I think, Jeff, you are a certain type of player who's looking for a certain type of experience. And I don't think you're giving enough credit where credit is due to the novelty factor of variability. Yes, chess is infinitely replayable. No two ways about it. Poker, infinitely replayable with the infinite number of cards. But I don't feel that way. I've played enough chess in my life to say, geez Louise, I never want to play that game again. It's the same thing over and over and over again. Now I know, if you're a chess aficionado, that's blasphemy. Every game of chess is a unique puzzle to solve and a unique gambit. And I watch the Netflix show and all that. But to me, chess feels the same every single time because I am not a diehard aficionado super fan of chess or poker or, whereas a game that gives, chess that, a version of chess that had different setup scenarios where, if somehow they could come up with a way to balance that, oh, well, I've got 3 rooks and no knights, and you only have half the number of pawns as normal, but everything else is the same. That would be amazing. I would love to see. Don't get me wrong, I probably still want to play it because at the end of the day, I not only am I not interested in chess because of the lack of variability, but also because at the end of the day, it's a very confrontational game. So I'm just not interested in playing it. But if I didn't have that confrontational thing, I would love to see a version of chess like that. And don't get me wrong, that comes up all the time. People are constantly coming up with new ways to mix chess with a deck of cards and, and all kinds of things to add more variability. Because for some time, and you say it yourself, Jeff, for some types of players, the replayability that we appreciate is from the novel and the new. Different combinations of things, not different combinations of moves that will play out slowly over the course of the game. Oh, I started with the Kasparov gambit, and you countered with the, I don't even know what, but still, and that's going to lead to a different game over the course of the game. But at the end of the day, I'm still moving the same pieces around with the same set of rules, and to me, it feels exactly the same. And the variability that comes from, oh, well, I lost my knight really early on. I appreciate that makes a different experience, but not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for Agricola where, wow, I guess I'm really going to focus on vegetables this time because if I can get these 3 cards working together, that's going to make an amazing engine. It's unlike any other game I've ever played of Agricola, where if I can pull this off. And that is less, and again, that is about novelty. And I would say variability done well, where the variability is truly game-changing, is warrants, to me, is a more exciting and engaging version of replayability. So, if I were to separate them into different categories, I suppose so. I suppose you still could, but it's very hard for me because the version of replayability that you find engaging, Jeff, is a complete. I would rate chess and Go and crokinole and cribbage as low replayability for me and my sensibility. And I think that would be incorrect. I would be making a factual error to state that, but it would be my own subjective opinion. So I think I'm going to stick with the way it is. But you're entirely right to bring all this up, Jeff. I don't disagree at all. But it really, at the end of the day, it does come down to what players are looking for. Okay, next up, Jeff wants to set a scene. Jen and I are traveling cross-country in the RV, which we are doing right now. As you can see, I am in the RV. I'm sure I probably mentioned that at the beginning. Once again, I'm filming stuff out of order. Anyway, though. All of a sudden, mechanical warnings start popping up. Oh, that has happened in this trip. On the instrument panel, major breakdown seems inevitable. In addition, the weather app informs of severe storm warnings. Jeff, it's like you've been spying on us on our trip. All this stuff is happening. And because you're in the middle of nowhere, this involves impending tornado activity. So, you must seek shelter and find somewhere safe for you and the pups to ride out the storm and get the RV fixed. Okay, now it hasn't gone that far, but we have definitely had to ride out some storms. It's been pretty scary at times. As luck would have it, there's an isolated home in a country lane with a nice couple who recognize our predicament and offer to help. Make matters better, they both enjoy board games, love dogs, and phenomenal cooks. Well, this is great. This has not happened for us. We agree to take up residence for a couple days until the storm rolls through and the RV mechanics can do their repairs. So to decompress, of course, with this delightful pair, we ask if they have any games they want to play. And we're on vacation. They have 3 games to choose from, and we must play Merchants and Marauders, Dominant Species, Eclipse. Now, Jeff says, with the exception of Merchants and Marauders, I've done run-throughs of the other two. I have played Merchants and Marauders, and I thought it was so terrible, I decided I'm not even going to bother running through it. If I recall correctly, I really hated Merchants and Marauders. I thought it was just awful. And Jen, I didn't even think we could finish playing a game. It was so bad. Anyway, though, I say, folks, there are plenty of games out there I don't like, and I could go into great depth why, but I was raised, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. Anyway, though, so, extolling the virtues of design, other categories. All right, so our hosts in this hypothetical situation point out there's a nice semi-cooperative variant for Eclipse, house rules for Merchants and Marauders that don't allow for attacking each other, and in dominant species, you can eliminate one or two of the really nasty take that card. So if I have to choose, which would it be? Oh, Eclipse, no two ways about it. Easily. Merchants and Marauders is just a slog. Oh my gosh, that game should last half as long as it does. It just never ends. It's interesting, all three of these games are very much on the long side, but Merchants Marauders is a really lightweight game. For the amount of length of time it takes to play, there is no meat on that bone. It is so simple and straightforward, and I get it. It's incredibly rich and thematic, so I understand why people love it, but there is just not much actual game there in our experience, having played it maybe half of the way through and realizing, oh my god, this is so boring, we just have to stop. So Merchant Marauders is straight out. Dominant Species and Eclipse are both brilliant. Make no mistake about it. I did not know about the semi-cooperative variant for Eclipse. That's news to me. I have to admit, my inclination would have been heading towards Eclipse anyway, because a lot of Eclipse from my plays of it, I played it a few times, is really just, I'm just playing in my own little sector of the galaxy, and sooner or later somebody's going to muscle in, and you know what, hey, maybe we can work something out, we don't have to fight at all. But if we do have to fight, it's really not going to be a major portion of the game. Whereas Dominant Species is, again, having played it many, many years ago, as I recall, it is a much more aggressive, boy, you know, it's a more aggressive area control game, but it's so abstract. I mean, you don't really build stuff like you do in Eclipse. You know, I built a fleet that you can destroy in Eclipse. I mean, me putting down some cubes that you get rid of in Dominant Species, that's tough. Which one would I go for? And I do think ultimately, at the end of the day, Dominant Species is the superior design. No offense to Tuco Takali, Eclipse is very, very cool as well. I think, you know, I'm actually going to about face. I'm probably going to go with Dominant Species. More elegant rule set. Now, my biggest complaint about Dominant Species really isn't the domination so much. It's the amount of extra bookkeeping that has to go into keeping track of, you know, how the different tiles are leaning based on what players have done. You know, all that kind of stuff. But hey, if I'm playing with this lovely board gaming couple and they know the game like the back of their hands, that means for once they've got to do all the upkeep. And it doesn't have to be me for once. So, yeah, I think I'm going to go Dominant Species for those reasons. Eclipse number 2, a close second. And you know, I don't know what this semi-cooperative mode is, but it intrigues me. It very much is this like a one versus many? One player can play as the Ancients and everybody else can be? If so, that would probably go into number 1, and we'll just have one of the nice hosts take it. But all other things being equal, I'd probably go with Dominant Species if I got to play it with somebody who could do all the heavy lifting of the maintenance and whatnot. Okay. Number 3, says Jeff, I've seen you get fairly emotional during some run-throughs. Freedom, the Underground Railroad comes to mind. Are there any notable games that have caused you strong emotional responses? Sadness, joy, anger. Sure. A bunch. I tend to talk about them when it happens. It doesn't happen that often, but you're right. Freedom, the Underground Railroad was one. The original Pandemic Legacy, Jen and I found that to be incredibly emotionally powerful. Else. This war of mine, geez Louise. But you know, these are all just kind of negative emotions, you know, sadness, despair, joy and anger. I mean, any good game is going to provide us joy. I mean, it's joyful just to succeed at what we set out to do. For us, if things are going well, Agricola is a joyful game. And it generally engenders joy. And we pull off a really tough thing and we look back and we see, I didn't think I'd be able to do it. Look what I've done. That's true joy for us. Anger. A game that sparks anger. I don't think so. Honestly, anger is something I feel enough of in my day-to-day life when I look around at the state of the world. So I don't want to experience that. You know, sorrow and despair
I will welcome that. In the same way, I'll welcome. Is this a movie I'm going to turn on the waterworks? Sign me up. I want to watch that movie. I love blubbering my way through a movie. It's a really cathartic, emotional release. Anger isn't the same, though. I'm not looking for that in anything. So, yeah, there's plenty of sadness. Most games, if they're good and satisfying, can spark joy. Anger, not something we're tending to go for that often. Don't really look for that very often. Number 4, along the same lines, Freedom of the Underground Railroad, in addition to being a good co-op game, goes to great lengths to provide an educational experience. I agree. Jeff finds that these types of games really resonate. Wingspan, which offers text on the cards that highlight the facts about different birds, was a nice touch. Genotype delved into Mendelian genetics. Wonder, what other games could you think of that do this very well and are also considered to be really well designed? Geez Louise, that's a good question. And I am sorry to say, Jeff, hopefully you've been satisfied with my other answers up now, because you're not going to be satisfied with this. My brain is not very good at just pulling up data points like that at all, really. So this, I think, is going to be something you're better off going. Go to faq.rahdo.com. I think it's entry number 6. Hey, if I like this game, recommend another game, which is basically what you're asking here. And then all I do is I recommend people go check out the recommendation form on Board Game Geek. I guarantee you, Jeff, you would get a much better answer there than what I could come up with off the top of my head. The only thing I can think of, quite frankly, is just only because I played it recently. It's a silly little example, but I was very surprised that Deep Dive from Flat Out Games, which is a very lightweight party-style push-your-luck game about penguins hunting for prey in the deep ocean, how I learned a lot about penguin behavior in that, because they really modeled a lot of real-world stuff into the game mechanisms in really sharp ways. That's neither here nor there. It's not really what you're looking for, but it's all I can think of off the top of my head. Sorry, man. Finally, number 5. Years ago, I did a run-through of Powergrid with the Robots expansion. Yes, I do remember that. I mean, I always respect how bold and experimental Friedman Freeze is, and that Robot certainly was, and it was definitely ahead of the curve. Anyway, Jeff continues, we thought it was a fun 2-player experience, but recently came across a variant for 2-player called Against the Trust. Am I familiar with it? And does it make for an even better 2-player game? I've never heard of it. Here's the deal. Funnily enough, Powergrid has a lot of replayability built in. But it doesn't have that much setup variability, does it? It really doesn't. You know, the order that the power plants come out in, and I forget, is there a little bit of uniqueness or randomness to the setup of the board? Or is it just, I think it's been so long, it's been so many years since I played. Powergrid is, in its base incarnation, where, yeah, it's pretty much the same game. Oh, maybe I'll get nuclear a little bit sooner this time. Or maybe I'll be frozen out of coal early in the game. But it's still basically the same beats. We're still going to expand the same way. We're still going to try to, hedge our bets and bid the same way. To me, it doesn't really feel like, until you throw those robots in, that it has enough built-in replayability. And now, again, I know that's not true. Obviously, people have played thousands of games of Powergrid and keep coming back for more. But that to me, it falls under that same aegis of chess, or Go, or Othello. Not Othello. What am I thinking of? The backgammon. Hey, backgammon's the same freaking game every time, but people play it, from the day they're born to the day they die. Oh man, it's a national pastime in Greece. But anyway. But for me, it's like, it's just pushing these little discs around over and over again. Man, if only there were special discs that could be thrown in every once in a while to throw that novelty factor in. So I don't know anything about Against the Trust. It's interesting, but I have to admit, I'm not really that keen on going back. Now that I know the existence of it, if I ever find myself in a situation where I might have access to a Powergrid copy, I might try it at a convention or something. I'm intrigued. But again, I did not fall in love with Powergrid enough to want to go back. Okay, let's move on to Johan, who says, hello. I usually watch the podcast and other YouTube channels that discuss empathy in gaming. And I think the game, that concept is a bit too broad. I'm a nurse who has worked in emergency care for many years. Since empathy is something that's very important in my work, I started wondering why patients would sometimes have such negative responses to staff that seemed very empathetic. That's interesting. Please continue, Johan. After a while, I was able to identify 2 types of people. The first one, who I will call the empath, is good at feeling what their patients are feeling. These aren't very common in healthcare, since they tend to be seclusive because they constantly get too many different feelings from people around them. Some, though, get addicted to other people's feelings and tend to end up in clinics with lots of emotions. These can sometimes be a bit scary. Because they sometimes don't have a lot of emotions themselves but feed on others. But the patients will always love them. The other kind of people, the other kind of people don't have the ability to feel other patients' feelings. I'm sure they do have the ability, but it's not something that comes naturally, or it's just not first and foremost on their mind or whatever. But they do have very strong power of association. If they meet a patient with a broken leg, they'll immediately associate that to themselves. Their leg will hurt, and they'll treat that patient exactly as they'd want to be treated. Unfortunately, this is more of a selfish stance. Patients react in different ways. Some will react precisely like the nurse, expecting that they will love the nurse, but others react differently, be annoyed with the nurse. The nurse, in that case, could get upset, sad, and don't understand why the patient was so evil to them. Now, in board game discussions, I feel like we're always discuss the second type of person, the one who isn't very good at feeling other people's feelings, but more associate what they themselves would feel in similar circumstances and call that empathy, which in theory it is, but seems like it's a selfish empathy. I don't mean to ramble on too long. Too late, Johan. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. And by the way, thank you for wearing a mask during COVID. It means a lot for us who worked on the front line. Thank you very much for I certainly got so much hate, man. Just wearing a mask recently when I was doing the thing with Dan last month brought out so much hate and anger all over again, with people saying, you're actually risking your own life by wearing a mask. It's amazing how much misinformation has been fed into people's ears. But regardless, thank you. I appreciate that. I get a lot more of the Rahdo, you're a jerk for wearing a mask, and you're going to kill yourself, and it does nothing, and you're a fool. So it's nice to hear a positive, especially from somebody in the medical profession. That's extra awesome. Oh, you have an addendum. An easy way to identify the 2 types of people is to check which character you play in game. The person that feels other people's feelings don't really care who they play outside of artistic preferences. They can identify with everything. The person who associate wants to have a character who they are similar to themselves as a possibility. Okay, that's interesting. So, no, I've certainly never really heard of this type of... I could certainly see it makes sense. There's this classification of different types of empathy, because as you yourself said, at the end of the day, it's the end result that matters. Am I... in a social situation, able to, I was going to say see the world through somebody else's eyes, but maybe that's it. So like you said, the second one is more about, I see it through my own eyes, or I interpret your experience through my own lens. So I guess I would call that appreciating what someone else is going through, even if it is through my own lens, as opposed to truly being able to think, what is that like for them? And, make that up whole cloth. That is interesting. I mean, obviously my first question is, what type am I? What type am I indeed? I mean, I certainly know that I'm very, very quick to think. We're touring the great national parks of Southeast Utah. And when we were at Canyonlands, as we drove by the visitor center, which was completely overflowing with cars because we were there on the weekend. And so people were having to park out along the dirt road on either side, and they were crammed in there. And as we went by, we saw one car had actually gone into the ditch. They'd gotten too close to the edge when they were trying to park on the side street and ended up going into a little ditch or culvert or something like that. And, their rear wheels, they were almost 9 degrees straight up and down. And it was a couple of young girls who were in their 20s, and you could see them talking on the phone. And Jen and I were both like, oh my gosh, that's so terrible. I feel so horrible for them. And this is like my most recent opportunity to exercise empathy. And I guess if I think about how I thought about it, my first thought would be, It's so terrible for them because I imagine myself in that circumstance. How would I feel? And I imagined, first of all the embarrassment that they had to feel knowing that, because we were just one of dozens, hundreds of cars that were driving by. And it's interesting, Jen and I ran into them at an overlook later, and I recognized them because they made such an indelible imprint in my brain. And I walked up and said, "Hi, I'm sorry to interrupt. Were you the ones who, had the car go into the ditch by the visitor center? And I'm sorry to interrupt you." And they said, "Oh my gosh, yes." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're okay because I saw your car and it looks like you didn't take any damage. That's wonderful. I feel so much better." Because, my wife and I, we were driving by and we just felt so terrible. It must have been awful. And they said, thank you. Because actually the vast majority of people who drove by had their cameras out and were filming it. And they fully expected they were going to have a minor viral outbreak on their hands, because most people were just pointing and laughing and making fun of them. And that was mind-boggling to me. Because that would never occur to me in a million years. My first thought when I saw them was, oh my gosh, that's so horrible. They must feel so embarrassed knowing that all these people are driving by. And it turns out I was right. Everybody's making fun of them. And they must be terrified how much damage has their car gone through and how much is that going to cost them to get it repaired. Thankfully, the car didn't take any damage. And, they're on vacation. Is this ruining their entire... Is this just going to be the defining element? Because are they going to be able to get out of there? Are they going to be able to recover from this? Are they going to fight amongst themselves? Is this going to lead... my brain just spiraled into all these things that could happen if it were me and Jen in that circumstance. And I don't know, what does that mean? You tell me, Johan, because I do circle back around to say, me imagining how I would respond to that. So I guess that means I'm doing an association thing, right? In which case, this other type of, the true empathy you're talking about, I guess I don't know what that is. So I don't know what to say. At the end of the day, I do think the more important thing, though, is to, whether you can walk a mile in somebody else's shoes or whether you can just remember your own experience walking through different shoes so you have a more open response to them that hopefully lifts their spirits. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. You're a nurse. You're there, to help people and lift their spirits as much as anything else. So, it's tricky. I don't know. Those are just some random thoughts on a very fascinating topic. Thank you, Johan. Okay, then let's go on to Victory BHG, who says, see, I didn't skip anything, did I? Okay. So, in a few years, in a few of your reviews and your recent conversations with Kimberly regarding Earth, I've mentioned that players have to realize that Game X, whatever we're talking about, is a race game. Victory BHG says, I've heard your reviews over the years, and a few reviews come to mind regarding race games, Maracaibo and Corrosion specifically. I've listened to and read reviews where players don't realize the game is a race game, and the games take too long and the scores are really high. So, questions. What should games do to make the race element apparent? Should it be mechanisms, themes, something else? Should games have time limits, or should players have control over? Should players have control over the ending? Not sure if that's a prime feature of race games, or should they not have control? I'm sure is what you meant. It's a good question. Honestly, the number one thing developers have to do, and they never ever do this. It's just this weird attitude. There's so many weird things about board game rule books. And one of them is, for the love of God, do not ever run the risk of spoiling the discovery of the game for the players. Don't put strategy tips in. It's going to be so much more fun and satisfying for players to lose miserably over and over and over again as they go up against some other player who did figure out those strategies, who already knows those strategies, or they're just going to struggle and try to figure out why can't things click because they haven't figured out the strategy and they got to play the game 5 times. You can see I'm being sarcastic. I think that is a ridiculous attitude for rulebook writers to take. I think rulebooks should tear down the rulebook equivalent of the fourth wall and talk directly to the player, directly to the reader, and say, hey, by the way, here's a few things you might bump into. And we just want, the kind of stuff that if I were teaching a player in real life, I would warn them, hey, by the way, this is a race game. It can sneak up on you really quick. If other players are going quick and you're taking your own sweet time, you might find yourself very frustrated that they trigger the end of the game before your ultimate goals can come to plan. So remember that. It's a race. Never forget you're racing to do whatever it is you're doing. I think the rules should come right out and say that. And they should also, and bear in mind, because this is a race game, if all the players at the table don't treat it like that and take their own sweet time, there is a risk the game will go on too long, and you may find that frustrating also. Now, it's tricky, because the one thing you do not want to put, if there's one word you don't want to put in your rulebook, it's the word frustrating, because you don't even want to raise the specter of that. But you've got to be open and honest with your readers and let them know. And I think that's the important thing. Now, if you're not going to do that, and nobody does, every game you talked about, Maracaibo, Corrosion, Earth, none of these rule books warn players that, by the way, you could have a really bad time playing our game if you forget that it's a race game. And it's on the rulebook writers for failing players. I don't blame... I remember, you're right, Corrosion was a really good example. A lot of people said, oh my God, our first game of Corrosion took 4 hours. This was entirely wrong. And it's like, yeah, because nobody was racing. And everybody was just like goofing around. And the game doesn't have its own internal clock. And I don't blame those players. I blame the producers of the rule book for not telling players. It would be like saying, like writing a rule book and not telling people, I'm trying to think of something so incredibly obvious that how could you not tell them that? Not telling people, hey, everybody claim a victory point marker and put it on the victory point track. Because they assume, oh, everybody knows there's a track of numbers around the corner. There's these little discs. We don't have to tell players. They just know that those are victory point tracks and they should use them to keep track of their points. And if a rulebook didn't say that, that would be criminal. And for me, it's the same thing. And it's the same attitude of, well, it's self-evident. Players should discover this. It's wrong. So, but barring that, I think there's certainly nothing wrong. And I've mentioned this in games of this ilk. Hey, put a freaking timer in. If you don't want to warn people that they're playing a race, then put in a timer yourself. And, it's very easy to do. The problem with those is timers just for their own sake. It becomes a little bit of busy work that, hey, at the end of every round, when the first player marker moves clockwise to the next player, mark that you're in round 18 of 25. See, that's going to be a bit ridiculous. Keeping track of 5 rounds is one thing, but keeping track of 25 rounds, that's pretty tough. Which is why it's more important to just educate your players. That's what the developers should do. They don't do it. I don't know why. Alrighty. Continuing on. The other question I had was, people say games are point salads, where they can score in many different ways, and more often, they seem to be high-scoring affairs. What's your opinion of high-scoring games versus low scores? Can low scores be point salads? Do high-scoring games give players more agency to strategize victories, or can low-scoring games allow that as well? Again, your review of Earth made me think on this question, as you mentioned one game where scores were over 300. Yeah, that was a game where nobody was racing. Same with Maracaibo, where that can happen. Okay. Well, first of all, a point salad game... A point salad game, its definition, I suppose, just means it's a game where you get points for doing anything, right? That's generally, first of all, let's not forget, it's a largely derogatory term. It was originally thought of as a pejorative, saying, oh, this is one of those point salads where it doesn't matter what I do because I'll get points no matter what. And that's absurd. That is a ridiculous, wrong-headed assumption that people make when they use point salad dismissively, often for, really wonderful Euros like from Stefan Feld and whatnot. Yes, in Trajan, there's a lot of different ways to score points. So you could call it a point salad because there's points coming at you every which way to Sunday, or Forum Trajan for that matter. But the thing is that, first of all, the pejorative is wrong because winning does not mean because people think, oh, because it's a point salad, it literally doesn't matter what choices I make because in the end, I'll get an equal number of points regardless. And that's just fundamentally wrong-headed. So let's just put that aside. Because obviously it's a good term and I like it. You know, it's a good thing to specify, a point salad is a game where there's lots of different sources of points. So with that in mind, could you have a low-scoring point salad game? Yeah, sure, why not? If you have a game that's going to last 5 rounds. If players are going to take, what am I thinking? I'm thinking of Simplicity. I just talked about that in a video not too long ago. The game Simplicity, it's a little SimCity game. Tile layer. You literally get to lay 5 tiles. 10 if you're playing the 2-player game, because you control 2 players worth of stuff. But either 5 or 10 tiles over the course of the game. Every one of those tiles has different ways to score. And but they kept it really simple. There's like some simple majority stuff, but I could have imagined a much more elaborate version of Simplicity, which wouldn't be able to be called that, where each tile has like implicitly 6 different things it could do for you. Right? One based on its location relative to other tiles. One based on its location relative to where it is in the overall city board. 3 based on, actual actions or maybe say 2. 2 that it has actions based on it. 1 based on whether it's played early in the game or late in the game. And 1 because it has some base value on it. Anywhere from 1 to 6 points on it, right? Let's just say that each one tile you place, and you're only going to place 5 tiles over the course of the game, each one of them has 6 different metrics, 6 different ways it could score you points. And even though you're only going to make 5 decisions in that game, I would still call it, and you're probably not going to make a very high-scoring game, because the reason point salad games are high-scoring games is because they tend to go on the long end. They just tend to. So you have more time to explore and leverage and get really good at 1 or 2 of the 7 things you could do and really push those hard. But I can imagine a short game that is every bit as point salad-y, where no matter what, this tile, I'm only going to place 5 tiles. Each one of these tiles is going to score points in different ways. That's a point salad, strictly speaking. I don't think it would feel like it, though. Although, honestly, what I just described sounds like a really awesome game that I would very much like to play. If there are any burgeoning game designers out there, it's yours. Run with it. Let's make that game. So, I think, for the most part, high scores and point salad do tend to go hand in hand. Not because of the pejorative, hey, you get points no matter what you do, but because the developers want to give you a sandbox to play in long enough so you can really leverage all those different point revenue streams. So I think that's pretty much how it would go. Okay, and I think that is it for me. Yes, we are done. That's it for the game questions, folks. There weren't really any stuff I just did. I didn't think any of those really jumped out as being gen questions. So, if you're done with gamey type stuff, then you can get off now. But please send more questions to questions@rahdo.com. Whether it's about games, about the channel, about life, the universe, and everything, whatever it is, send them to questions@rahdo.com, and so we can talk next month. And thank you for watching. Talk to you there so long. Bye-bye. And now if you stick around, Jen will be joining us, and we'll get into the personal Q&A. Okay, everybody, we are back. It's time for the personal stuff. Sorry, no gaming questions for Jen this month. Folks, if that makes you sad, send in some questions for this lady right here. Oh. Honey, proof of life.
Oh, hi.
There
Hello,
she
everybody.
is. For folks who are watching instead of listening, Jen is joining me. We've got a bunch. I think we have more personal questions than actual game questions this month. So weird. But anyway, without further ado, let's get right to it. Starting with Daniel, who has a bunch of questions. First of all, what are our thoughts on Hogwarts Legacy being one of the most sold games on Steam and Epic? Are all those people buying the game transphobic or just ignorant? Actually, Daniel, I would say a lot of them, there's a third option, they're selfish. They know full well all the problems associated with J.K. Rowling and how she has emboldened anti-trans movements around the world, how she regularly, hangs out with people who are doing real harm in the world. Yeah, J.K. herself is not doing anything directly other than emboldening all of these really bad actors and making life much worse for trans people around the world for no good reason. She is the ultimate example of ignorance, and I think while there's a lot, of course, there's going to be a whole bunch of people who are loving Hogwarts Legacy who just have no idea at all because they're just not plugged into the zeitgeist, and that's understandable. I mean, actually, there's a question coming a little bit later that I hadn't heard of that I had to go look up. So it's understandable. And yeah, and again, what's Hanlon's razor? Always, never ascribe to malice that which can be explained by ignorance. So I think for a lot of folks, that's the reality. Of course, there are some people who are like, yeah, screw the trans. I'm buying this because I want their rights to be taken away. And there's going to be plenty of people like that too. But I think there's a lot of folks who just know, yeah, she said some really bad stuff. But you know what? I really want to play this game anyway. And I know full well that me playing this game sends the message that I care more about my own personal enjoyment than I do about, the human rights of marginalized people who need my support. And those people, they're just selfish a-holes. And a lot of people are going to be that way. Now, some of them are going to be ignorant because they're going to be, well, what did she really say anything that was that bad? Was it really matter? It's just a game. And again, that's going to come back to ignorance. But yeah, a lot of people know better and they're playing it anyway. So there's a whole spectrum. Honey Pie, I assume you have nothing to say about this other than it all makes you very sad.
Yes.
Then we'll move on to something that'll make you a bit happier. Although I don't know if we can do this one right now. We might have to put it in the spoiler section. Picard. What would be the 3 things that make season 3 better than the previous season?
Well, of course, getting the band back together.
Which, of course, everybody knows. There's no spoilers there. So that is your number one thing. You know the interesting thing about that is?
Yeah.
The reason it's taken 3 seasons to happen
Yeah.
is because Patrick Stewart said right up front, yeah, I'll only do this show if we don't do this, if it is not a reunion show.
Oh, really?
I want this to be completely new characters, completely new stories, completely new adventures. Okay, we'll put in, the original series has just like a tiny little bit of, hey, here's a few characters from the original series, but, very, very little. And you say, I do not want to get the whole band back together. I want this to be something completely new.
Wow.
And it's only now because this is the 3rd and final season of the show. He said, I don't think I've ever heard an interview with him. He said, I relented. I'll give the people what they wanted. Because, everybody wanted it to be right from the get-go. Hey, let's get the whole band back together in season 1. But Patrick Stewart stood opposed. But anyway, that's your number 1. Can you say, because I kind of know what your favorite stuff is, can you say it without spoilers? What your number 2 is?
I don't know.
We can just put this in the spoiler section.
Let's put it in the spoiler section.
Alrighty, we are going to control copy, and we're going to look away from the dog pictures.
I'm looking at a live dog outside.
All right, there's a dog outside, control V. All right, so we'll come back to this one, Daniel, in the spoiler section after you do all the other things. So, folks, only listen to that at the end if you're actually caught up on Picard Season 3. Next up, Honey Pie, question number 3, rookie question, number 1.
Ooh.
What's your favorite thing about the rookie? For Daniel, it's how every character is important and interesting and the way they replaced all the people who left the show. New characters as good as, if not better. Harper cough. This is, of course, true for all seasons apart from the 3rd. Wow, Daniel really knows. I couldn't tell you what happened from one season to another in the rookie, but right. And Nolan, despite him apparently being a jerk to one of his co-stars on Castle. I had no idea. Never watched Castle. Well, actually, I think we watched a couple episodes of Castle, and it was like, this was not worth watching.
Yeah.
Anyway, though, so what is your favorite thing about The Rookie, Honey Pie? The TV show.
Obviously, Officer Nolan is one of my favorite things. I think his character...
Because he's just so perfect.
He's absolutely perfect. Mm-hmm. But he's not as perfect as...
the rookie on the Rookie Feds, who is beyond perfect,
yeah,
who
she's
is overly
clairvoyant.
perfect. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Nolan does make mistakes.
Yes.
He has made plenty of mistakes, and he's always come back stronger and learned from them. And
but
that's a strong element of his character, too.
He seems to be a very caring human person, and I really like that about him.
Yeah.
Let's see. What are my favorite things about the rookie? Yeah, I think you're right. It's nice that all of the characters have their own arcs. I mean, it could have been that Lucy was always just going to be another one of the rookies and he slept with her for a while, or they slept together for a while, and she never quite got her own line. But she's panned out and fleshed out and everything. I like that. Let's see what else. There are sometimes the shows when they do these Hollywood exclusive.
That next question has to do with that.
Oh God, I hate those.
Yes.
I absolutely hate them. I just there's no point in me watching that. It's ridiculous. Right. So I would say the storytelling more or less is also pretty good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I mean, I don't know if I like the show enough that I'd be watching it. I mean, we started watching it because Mom really liked it.
Yeah.
And then when Mom passed on, we kept watching it because you really like it. I think it's good. I think it's certainly well put together. I think the best moments are there. I forget. I couldn't tell you which season it was, but the season where they actually reckoned with police brutality and abuse. Because there was one bad cop. Played by Brandon Routh, but he was obviously a stand-in, and everybody had to come to terms with that. And I mean, I thought that was handled actually really deftly, all things considered. But I think they've often done a really great job of action sequences. Especially, I remember some of the shootouts in the first season. Which is so pablum. It's so pat. I mean, you see it so often, but I was like, wow, this is actually really engaging. There's actual real tension. There's stakes here. And that's kind of gone away because nowadays. It's like there are only 7 cops in the entirety of LA, and they are always the 7 cops who will show up for everything, and it just gets so ridiculous. But the characters are well fleshed out, and they're charismatic actors. Sure, like I said, I don't think the show would be good enough for me to watch on my own, but I enjoy it. I give it like a 70% attention. I have a ranking system, for all the shows we watch with Jen. Is it a 70%? Is this a 30%? Oh, this is a 90%. And I would give Rookie a 60, 70%. But I like it. But anyway, the next question is Rookie question number 2. People seem to really hate the episodes with the film crew, the reality style episodes. The ratings on the Internet Movie Database are below or around 5s out of 10. I personally found them entertaining despite disliking reality shows. What are your thoughts?
I hate it.
Hate it.
Hate them.
Hate it.
Them. And I don't. Well, I guess I don't watch.
Why do you hate
shows.
them so much?
Oh, I feel so gossipy and so. I don't know.
See, in theory, it's trying to present you with another side of these characters that you love, where they're, where they're kind of.
Yeah, I guess that's part of it too. Like that, Lucy becomes kind of this fangirl of things when she's being interviewed, and she goes from being a very strong, directed, stable person to being he this and he that, and I don't know. I guess I just feel like it trivializes everything.
Okay.
I don't like it.
I would say, for those episodes get probably a 10 to 15% from Jen. She'll just do something else, and just in case there's something that happened that's important, because they do have ongoing storylines. Yeah. But yeah, you vehemently hate them so much. I think they're well done. I appreciate that it's tricky. I do think Jen makes a very good point that they suddenly, a lot of times, they start acting way out of character for comedy. And honestly, I think they'd be a lot better if they played them straight. The problem is, every time they do it, they try to do everything for laughs. And that's the problem. The real reality shows, the character, they aren't, yucking it up and doing silly stuff. Of course, real reality shows like this are presented. I would say it's being true to the format, but I think it's unfortunate that it's not true to the Rookie. And I would like to see them take the opportunity to say, hey, if we're going to do this, let's show you how good a reality show really could be. If we actually took the subject matter seriously instead of just tried to sensationalize everything. Because I guess you could say they're maybe doing a parody of real reality shows, and I guess there's some merit to that, but for the most part, I just think they're aping it, and it's inconsistent with the stuff that makes the show good. Alrighty, we're done with the Rookie. Next thought, I had to go look up. What are my thoughts about the CNN article about digital blackface? I'm sure you've never heard of it. I had not heard of it either. Maybe I would have heard of it if we hadn't been on the road for the last few weeks, but I looked it up, and having now read the original article and looking at the firestorm of controversy, what it looks to me like, Daniel, is a black journalist made a good point, and a whole bunch of right-wing white people came out of the woodwork and said, oh, we don't like that point he made. It makes us uncomfortable. Let's mock and ridicule him. That's what it looked like to me. The reality is, I personally, back when I was on Twitter, I stopped doing Twitter a while ago, and I stopped doing Facebook even before that. But occasionally I would try to, hey, let me put in a meme. This is going to be funny. Let me say, snarky laughter. And inevitably, the whole point of the article was, blackfaces, of course, right? White actors putting on blackface, culturally appropriating and at the same time trivializing and marginalizing, black people and entertainment styles and all of that, that a lot of memes you see, a lot of animated GIFs on Twitter are of black people saying wah 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 and doing bug eye stuff and doing stuff that kind of trivializes and again culturally appropriates, does everything that Blackface did. But they're just doing it in animated GIF form. Because, and nobody has a problem with the animated GIF, I don't know who it is, I think he's like a rapper or something like that. When, I want to look like I'm really smart. They put out the GIF that goes, see how smart I am? Everybody loves that one because it's actually a positive, uplifting one, as opposed to one that just plays on tired, stereotypical tropes. And it gives people the opportunity to let out their inner black person kind of a thing. And I thought it made good points. And
does this have anything to do with the two black state?
No, this happened before all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that is. So I thought the article made good points, and the vast majority of people who are arguing against it need to do a little bit of self-reflection, because dismissing it out of hand is kind of his whole point. That the act of doing this dismisses and marginalizes black people and keeps them in their lane. With again stereotypical, sometimes racist tropes, but I'm doing it as a joke, so it's okay. So yeah, I largely agreed with the article. Okay, let's see, number 6. Jen just tapped me on the shoulder, so I'm going to pause for a second.
Oh, don't pause. I have something I wanted to say.
Oh, no, Jen had something to say. Okay, we're coming back to number 5. Yes, honey pie.
Well, I heard you speaking earlier
What's
about the girls whose car tipped into the...
yeah.
Yeah, and how the majority of people, they said, were just laughing as they were going by.
Yeah, and taking pictures.
Yeah.
And videos to post.
Yeah, so I wonder if it isn't still kind of a reflection back on that whole social, what's cool. I mean, when I was in high school, it was cool to burn people.
Yes.
And you would burn them and you'd put them down. And I never liked that. It made me feel really kind of dirty and yucky inside. Yep. And I wonder if it's that same tendency of humans to just laugh at other people's misfortune or, get one up on them somehow or another versus being an empathetic, decent human.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know. Could be. Social media sucks. I walked away from Twitter. Because actually, I haven't walked away from Facebook, although I should. But the thing is, when I post a new video on Facebook, that gets hundreds of additional views to the video. When I did it on Twitter, that got maybe like a dozen, and it just wasn't worth it. And I didn't want to support Elon Musk and what he's doing there, because every time I post, I am just helping him. And social media is gross, and humanity has a long way to go to understand how to effectively and empathetically communicate with this new medium. Okay, anyway. Number 6, yes.
Yep. So that was, I just wanted to say that.
Okay.
Tie that back into the game section.
There you go. Well done. Full circle. Alrighty. Number 6, do you think that indicting Trump on such a small, and by that I mean appearing small and petty to some people, charge will only end up making him politically stronger in the long run? No. He's not politically strong anyway. He has never been politically strong. He has always been a political weakling. He has a diehard cohort of the right wing, of conservative people who will follow him to their graves. It's about 30%. Don't forget, he won. He beat Hillary on a technicality. He lost the what do you call, what's the popular vote?
Yeah.
He lost the popular vote by a huge margin. It's absurd that he became president when he lost by such an incredibly huge margin. He only won because of, again, a technicality of the stupid, ridiculous American electoral system, and it was a few thousand votes that swinged it. And, never mind the fact that, in the final days of his campaign,
so much crap.
The FEI guy, Comey, comes out and says, well, we're having to reopen the investigation. And then only 2 or 3 days before voting, when it was too late to make a difference, he said, never mind, it was fine. Well, I shouldn't even have mentioned it. It was stupid. But meanwhile, Trump gets his grab him by the pee. And that was a huge backlash. And right at that point, he pays 2 different porn stars a ton of money to be quiet so that they won't reveal all his porn affairs. He did. And he just barely skates by. If those things had been as widely reported on as Hillary's complete BS stuff that was proven by actual officers of the law to be BS. But nope, that's what everybody focused on because the media wrongly thought that Trump could never win. And they thought, oh, well, let's just go where the ratings are and let's just Trump things up, literally. But for a few little tweaks, he wouldn't have won that. And since then, he has lost Congress. Since then, almost everybody he backs ends up losing. He's a loser. He keeps losing over and over and over and over again. He only won one time on a technicality. So, no, do I think this will help? No, because all it does, it makes that 30% even more worked up. But it doesn't grow that 30% at all. And if anything, it makes more people say, wow, he really is a criminal. They've actually proven it now. It doesn't do him any good. It riles up the base, but the base is 30% of the electorate. And as long as people come out to vote, Trump won't win again. Fingers crossed. Alrighty. Number 7. As an avid sports lover, I agree with everything you said. This is obviously the follow-up from the sports rant. It doesn't apply to me, but the vitriol I see online or the abhorrent fan behavior during games is mind-boggling. What I do disagree with is the extent to which professional sports is responsible for this, since many other aspects of society, birth tribalism, a similar, even worse kind. Yeah, that's certainly true. I can't disagree with that. It's what do you call it? It's a symptom, not the disease, right? Disease is tribalism. It's just, sports are so stupid and meaningless and insignificant. For us to get so tribal over those, it's just mind-boggling to me. You might as well just get so upset over your favorite Powerpuff Girl. Why, we might as well have riots on that too. But it's a fair point. It's really, all the negative Sturm and Drang that comes from sports is really just reflective of, deep down lizard brain primal instincts that we still carry around because once upon a time, tribalism is what let us climb to the top amongst all the other Homo erectus and, and all the other ones. We stuck together, got rid of them, and that led us to the top. We don't need it anymore, but we're still hardwired to do it. And the thing is, sports is an incredibly glaring example of how it can bring out the worst in us. And it's so trivial and inconsequential. The fact that for my entire life, and probably my parents' entire life, the evening news gives an equal amount of time to sports scores as it does to world events is absurd. It is so inconsequential and meaningless. But I completely agree. You're right. It's the real problem isn't sports per se. What was it? There was I remember seeing a cartoon many years ago about maybe it was a series that it was South Park. There was an episode of South Park where somehow they ended up cutting way to the future, thousands of years in the future, and everybody had become an atheist, but we just found a new thing to be tribal over because everybody was an atheist either because of Al Gore or because of something else that made everybody an atheist. Yeah. And so there was still just as much Sturm and Drang because we still found a reason to say, oh, well, you have stars on your belly, so you're a star-bellied sneetch. Dr. Seuss had it right when we were kids. Yep. It's just sports. All right. And it's a shame too because sports should be, I only talked about sports at its worst. I didn't talk about sports at its best, to be fair. And sports at its best is a celebration of our bodies, of what amazing things we can do, how far we can push ourselves, what hurdles we can overcome. And that's beautiful. And of course, there's also esprit de corps and camaraderie and overcoming adversity. And that's all wonderful. It's just a shame that for every one of those, we get a half a dozen riots when a team wins or loses. Doesn't matter. Right. Anyway, though. Next up, number 8. I said we should listen to transgender people on trans issues. To which you reply, what if they disagree? I don't know who they is. If they disagree with the majority, I assume the trans people, with the majority narrative. For example, what if they don't think J.K. Rowling is transphobic? So are you saying, should we listen to trans people who think J.K. Rowling is not transphobic? Sure, listen to whoever you want. But if you want to have a well-rounded understanding of the situation, my point stands. Yeah, sure, listen to transphobic people who say they love J.K. Rowling and she's totally misunderstood. That's fine. But spend an equal amount of time talking or listening to the people who say these are the concrete examples of the harm she causes. Both sides it, and try to come to a conclusion. But I have listened for quite a while. Again, Jesse Gender is great. ContraPoints is also great. But I have watched videos from the other side. I find it very, very difficult because they very quickly degenerate. They're so dismissive. Go ahead, listen to anybody and everybody you can, but do not dismiss out of hand. If people are saying these actions are hurting me, I'm being harmed, don't dismiss that out of hand. Try to understand where they're coming from. Try to express some empathy. Circles, going back to circles. Alrighty, Johan's empathy. Alrighty, so David says, hi Rahdo, I understand you're not a fan of either one, religion or sports. I did listen to this month's podcast. Could you specifically answer the question, which is a greater detriment to society? I apologize, David, or I don't know if you asked originally. Yeah, I think I had intended to, and I'd pulled that one aside, but then I just kind of got wrapped up in the overall thing and didn't get into specifics. Yes, of course, religion has done more damage to humanity than sports. Of course. At the end of the day, sports ain't got nothing on the Holocaust. Sports ain't got nothing on the Holy Crusades. And people say, the Holocaust, that has nothing to do with religion. The Holocaust was the systematic extermination of Jewish people. Jewish people are systematically exterminated because Christians believe that they killed Christ. It's all stupid fairy tales. Gosh, if anything, I was just talking about why are we getting so worked up over sports? Mm-hmm. It's so ridiculous. At least sports are real. At least
there's a team.
There's a team. And there's feats of strength.
Yep.
There's something actually happened. As opposed to religion where it's all make believe. The Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost is just as concrete and real as Odin and Loki and Thor. You might as well worship them. And 10,000 times the pain and hardship. Now, to be fair, religion brings a lot of good into the world, too. It brings out our better angels. Jen's best friend in the world. They're a devoutly religious fella, as are his kids. His kids have actually traveled to, their local churches, organized trips to build schools in, impoverished countries and all kinds of stuff like that. That's great. That's amazing. But still, that stuff is inconsequential compared to the Holocaust.
And that I just saw a comic on Facebook saying, the men wearing dresses who are harming our children are not drag queens. They're people,
priests.
The popes and the priests.
Yeah.
Not popes, I don't maybe, but cardinals and all of that.
Yes.
Those are the men in dresses who are harming our children.
Yep. Yeah.
Not my children.
Yeah, sports, I'm not a fan of it, but man, religion says, hold my beer. Let me show you how it's done, sports. When we find a way to rip people apart and enhance tribalism, religion is the original. It's number two. First, we had literal real species tribalism, and then they're done. Now we're all the same. Well, we could decide to kill each other over which sun god we worship. When in fact, it's just a big ball of gas in the sky. We could do that now. Let's do that for a few millennia. That sounds great. So yeah, sports, at least it's real. So sports wins. Alrighty, unless you have anything to add to that.
No, I think you've done it.
Jeff says, in previous podcasts, you mentioned that we've adopted two Pitbull mixes. They're some of the sweetest dogs we've known. And they found their forever home with us. Pitbulls, as you probably know, have acquired an undeservedly bad reputation due to horrible owners that train them for nothing more than fighting. However, they are often referred to as nanny dogs. Yes, Jen has talked about this on the podcast in the past. I hadn't known about it myself. And our experience bears that out. Wonder if you have any similar positive experiences with the breed, knowing that you lean heavily towards beagles.
That we have any positive experience with
Pitbulls specifically.
Oh, I think they're wonderful dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you have any direct experience with Pitbulls?
Just I love them. I when I see them in dog parks, I go up and I talk to them, their owners, and see if I can pet them. And they're just I love their big old smiles.
Yep.
They're wonderful dogs.
Yeah. My brother and his son both had Pitbulls, so I spent a fair bit of time playing with them and all that. And yeah, they're just wonderful. So just sweet and charming. I mean, they are literally charming creatures. It's hard not to love them.
They're lovely.
And yeah, it's just a shame that, that there was this thing, the societal thing where, they can be trained to be brutal and killers, and that's not the fault of the dog at all.
Nope.
Any dog can be trained to be a brutal killer. We could train Daisy over there to be. She wouldn't be very good at it, but we could try.
She'd waggle herself on over.
Yeah.
I don't know, somehow.
Yeah, no, I mean, no, they're fantastic. They're wonderful. All right.
Oh.
Our perspective is that how you treat your dog ultimately molds their personality. If you're kind, affectionate, and loving towards a pit bull or any breed, they'll often mirror it right back to you. There are exceptions, of course, but what are your thoughts on breeds having negative reputations? And would pit bulls have garnered this bad rap had their breed been named something different like Fuzzleploops or Puffy Hugginkisses?
Interesting. Because a lot of people just call them pitties or...
Yeah.
There's a couple of other names for them too, like a Staffordshire Terriers. I think all of those kinds of dogs are sort of pit bull adjacent. So I'm not sure. It kind of brings to mind when German Shepherds were really named Alsatian after World War II because people were actually harming German Shepherds because their name is German.
Yep, I know.
It has nothing to do with the dog. It has everything to do with the human. And if you've ever watched any Cesar Millan or any other dog training, people who are into the behaviorism of dogs, you can have a dog that's fearful and aggressive and give it to a different human and it's not.
Yeah.
It's always reflecting back on the human.
Yes, definitely. It's interesting. While Jim was just talking, I just went and looked. Pit bulls were originally called bulldogs.
Oh.
That is their original name. And you can see that is not trying to be reflective of their temperament or personality, but rather just their physical stature.
Yeah.
Because they kind of stand like bulls and all of that.
Sure.
And it's interesting. Where was it? In 1898, Chauncey Z. Bennett founded the United Kennel Club and renamed bulldogs to be American Pit Bull Terriers. So,
Chauncey.
Chauncey. You're right. I mean, pit bull is pit and bull. That sounds, it is an unfortunate name. Chauncey, you should have done better, pal. Bulldog was perfectly fine.
I wonder if bulldog was more appropriate to the English bulldog with all their droopy, squishy faces.
I'm sure Chauncey, if he were here, he'd have a reason. I'm sure it would make sense.
Yeah.
And we'd say, Chauncey, could you just please look forward 100 years? And
call them American Cute Bull Terriers.
Yep, yeah. Could
Smiley
you please
Bull
call
Terriers.
them Puffy Hugginkisses? Puffy Hugginkiss Terriers.
Smile
That would be
Terriers.
fantastic. Yeah, I mean, you're right. Branding is huge.
Yes.
And it is very unfortunate they have. I mean, what is the more what dog has a more aggressive sounding name? Rottweiler, I suppose, because it sounds nastier than it does in the
Doberman.
original German. I mean, I don't think there's anything implicitly aggressive sounding about Doberman. It's just there are already preconceived notions about Doberman, and therefore it's applied. But Rot. Rot. I assume that's just red in German, right? Yeah. And it was Rot. All right. Where does the origin of Rottweiler? Origin of Rottweiler name. Yes, we know it's from Germany, but why are they called Rottweilers? It was known as the Rottweil butcher dog, a butcher bred type dog purely for performance and usefulness. All right, they come from the city of Rottweil, where they were a particular butcher bred that line. So they're called Rottweilers because that's the name of that town.
Yep.
But it still sounds kind of like, well, it sounds German, and to American ears, German just implicitly sounds harsh and aggressive because we haven't gotten over World War II, quite frankly. But yeah, you're right. They are definitely, they suffer from bad branding, and I further the rebranding to Fizzleploops, 100%. Question 2. I think you've mentioned bike riding is something you and Jen enjoy. Have you heard of RAGBRAI, or RAGBRAI? No. Since you have a new active RV lifestyle, it might be something you'd enjoy. It's a break from the weekly grind. It's not a competitive bike race, but rather a bike ride event spanning several days across the state of Iowa.
Oh.
You stop in small towns along a planned route, and there are roadside points of interest to keep you going. Beekman's homemade ice cream being the most notable for us.
Ooh.
Unbelievably delicious homemade ice cream from actual motor-driven ice cream makers on every day of the ride.
Cool.
Or perhaps something closer to you, like the Mount Baker Hill climb, or even closer, Ramrod, right around Mount Rainier in one day. Here's my problem with all of that stuff. That all sounds lovely, but when we lived in England, I biked to work, and I lived in Guildford and I worked in Bromley. And if you looked that up on a map, you'd say there is no way you bike that every day. No, I didn't. But I rode the train into London, and I biked through London. And when I first started doing it, I think I got off at Clapham Junction and then biked from Clapham Junction to Bromley. I think is how I first started.
There was something, yeah.
And that was like, I forget, like a 70-minute bike ride there and back. Because it just allowed me to avoid going into London proper and having to make transfers and all that. And I really enjoyed biking. I was having great time. And I pushed myself too hard and I screwed up my right knee. And I went to, what do you call it? Physical therapy for months. And did all kinds of stuff, and it never really did anything. So I cannot do any serious bike riding at all, ever since then. And that's what? It's probably 10 years ago now?
20 years, since we've been away from England for 10.
Geez, yeah, 15, 20 years, something like that. So the bikes we bought that are hanging off the back of our RV right now are e-bikes, which we're very much enjoying.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I mean, all those things sound great, but I don't know. I kind of feel like they'd probably frown on e-bikers showing up doing it because it's kind of against the you and the machine and the road kind of thing. And I physically just can't do it anymore because my right knee literally will not let me. If I bike for more than 20 minutes on a regular bike. On anything other than downhill slopes, my knee feels like it's going to break in two. And that's just the way it is. But would you like to do any of those things, Honey Pie?
No.
No, okay. Why not? You don't have the bad knee.
No, it's just too much and too organized.
All right.
I like to just go out and have fun.
Okay. Number 3, any plans to travel north in the RV? Vancouver, Whistler, Chilliwack? Even further north? If so, we're in Mount Vernon, Burlington area and be happy to provide a stop along the way if needed. In one of our more recent podcasts, you went into some detail regarding professional sports and the net all right. Okay. About the net negative effects. I agree with much of what you stated, but also wonder if you were being a bit selective by singling out pro and college sport. Oh, God, this is a whole separate question. I don't know how that happened. Look at that. Let's go just make this a new one. So, are we going to be going north, Honey Pie?
I do not believe that we are going to be going north anytime soon.
We were going to, because Jen's sister and husband and niece and nephew are going something.
My husband.
What did I say?
My sister and my brother-in-law and their family.
Well, I said your sister and her husband.
No, you said it doesn't matter.
Regardless.
Yes.
We have a tape now to prove it.
You can listen to it later. Mm-hmm. But anyway, we were going to go up. They were going to do Banff and that area.
Which is a ski resort in Canada, I guess, or something?
Yeah, it's just an area. But they've had such a hard time even booking the tickets that they want. And they're going to rent a truck with a camper on it. So us driving our big 30-foot motorhome up there, if they can't find camping spots for their little truck, excitement, then there's no way we can. And so we've kind of given up on it.
Yeah.
There's just...
And the other problem with going north is, hold on a second, folks. We're going to pause for a little bit. We'll be right back. Okay, folks, we're back. Jen was overheating because she is not used to sitting this close to me for this long, and apparently I am too much of a furnace radiator type, and so she just had to get up and get away from me for a little while. And now she's opened up all the windows, so she's eating some cold melon, and you might hear some more wind noise picked up by the mic. We'll see how that goes. But regardless, where were we? So the problem with going north is it's colder up north. And the thing is, Jen does not want to leave our lovely little home in southern Washington in the summer months because that's when it's at its most beautiful. But that would be the best time to go further north when it's beautiful up there too.
Yep.
So she wants to get the heck out of Dodge in the winter months when it's miserable and cold and gray and rainy. And that continues to be the case the further north you go. So that's why we find ourselves in southeast Utah as we film this right now, because it's snowing back home, and it's been we've been gone for almost a month, or over a month now, and it's been miserable almost the entire time. There have been very few not horrible days back home, I believe.
Yeah, but also it's been a really weird weather year.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the thing is, we already have a place that we ideally like to be up north when the weather is nice. So that's always going to be kind of a tricky thing. Because that was the other thing too. Even if, when we were talking about going up to that, whatever that thing was in Banff, well, we'd be leaving right when Jen's favorite time is, when she can actually go out and garden and stuff like that. She doesn't want to go then. So, we've been to Mount Vernon many times.
I lived in Mount Vernon for a summer.
Yeah, we know the area, and maybe someday, who knows, but probably not for a while. Okay, and now let's see. This is probably a bad, Jeff, I apologize if I did a bad copy and paste here. Heck, this might even be somebody else's questions, and I might have accidentally, so my apologies to whoever sent the following questions in if it's not Jeff. I do make goofs from time to time. In one of my more recent podcasts, I went into some detail regarding professional sports as a net negative for society. I agree with much of what was stated, but also wonder if you weren't being a bit selective by singling out pro and college sports. Well, first of all, remember, the first time I talked about this, which was just all on the fly and I wasn't expecting to say anything else, I repeatedly said that I was not talking about sports as a whole, that I think, communal sports, heck, even kids sports can be bad because parents can try to relive their glory years to their kids and whatnot. But it looks like you're going to go in a different direction. So how about I just stop interrupting and let you say, to wit, the pharmaceutical industry. Oh, I see. I probably put the 4 here. It's probably supposed to be up there. That's what it was. Because that makes no sense for that 4 to be right there. Jeff, all right, I fixed your email. Although I'm sure I screwed it up when I was copying and pasting in the first place. To it, the pharmaceutical industry, healthcare insurance companies, and hospitals certainly provide valuable services to the population by producing new and current medications, insurance to reduce healthcare costs, hospital-based care. But I'd argue each of these institutions is deeply flawed for various reasons. Medical expenses are some of the highest among developed nations, all the while simultaneously lining the pockets of these corporations and their CEOs. So, despite all the positives, does this represent another example of net negative? No, it does not. Not even remotely a tiny little bit is it a net negative, because at the end of the day, more people are alive than not because of advances in healthcare. Even though there are problems, as you are quite right to point out, and more importantly, these problems are regularly talked about. The entire political campaigns are driven around it. The entirety of the Obama presidency, I was going to say pregnancy, sorry Obama, the entire Obama presidency was ultimately a moratorium on the ridiculous healthcare system we've got and trying to make it better. And it is getting better. It is better now than it was when I was growing up, and it needs to get better still. Here's the deal, though. All of that is known and discussed and debated, and whereas nobody talks about all the problems with sports. Sports just gets a free pass, as a general rule. Again, more time is spent talking about sports than public health care in any newscast you will ever see on any night of the week, and that's ridiculous. And that gives sports an outsized and inappropriately sized impact on society that it does not deserve. And so that's why I'm more quick to call it out than, say, the medical industry, which of course needs to be called out as well. Believe me, I've called it out plenty of times on this podcast. I have complained. The thing that will eventually get us to leave this country, 2 things, lack of gun control and healthcare. Both of those reasons are why we will eventually return to Europe, where calmer heads prevail and saner policies are the norm. Alrighty. But anyway, continuing with Jeff, to me, an industry that profits primarily on the basis of people becoming sick and chronically ill doesn't sit right with me. Shouldn't all facets of healthcare be made for nonprofit? Yes, of course they should be. Yes. So please, vote Democrat. Do and ensure that all your friends and family do as well. Because as long as the Republicans still have a seat at the table, they will always be beholden to big business and at the expense of normal everyday people. That is literally their mantra. It is what it's what they do. It's in all of their playbooks. Anyway, sorry. Let's return to the realm of entertainment, which is really what pro sports are. Namely, television and movie entertainment. The industry likewise rakes in billions of dollars per year. But what is the net positives to society? Sure, news and documentaries, educational programs for adults and children, etc. But there's a lot of garbage out there they were willing to sign up and pay for. For what overarching benefit? I'd argue TV and movie offer little more than societal value in sports. I would disagree with that. I see your point, but no. Yes. there's lots of really crappy reality TV shows, tiara teens or whatever, tots and tiaras, all that kind of stuff is just garbage. It's a shame what the arts and entertainment and history channels, and maybe not History Channel, but what's the other one? I forget. But anyway, it's a shame there's a lot of garbage. But cinema and film and TV is art. And when done well, and I would say these days we are living in a golden age of entertainment that enlightens and informs, that actually talks about the human condition, that actually brings into the spotlight the problems that the marginalized among us have had to face in silence for generations. And you could say, yeah, that happened. Sometimes a sports celebrity will get on a pedestal or will kneel, and that will create a firestorm of controversy. But at the same time, movies, a lot of what I've learned about being a good human being came from watching frickin' Star Trek, quite frankly. The original Star Trek, the TV show, inspired generations of scientists that got us the frickin' cell phone, that made so many advances. Sports, I guess we have a lot of advances in sports medicine, and we have advances in sports equipment.
Yeah.
Sports didn't get us to the moon. Star Trek inspired generations and got us to the moon. Sports inspires people to do more sports. Sports is a closed loop. Entertainment. A personal story. What movie is it? I do not remember which movie it is, but Samuel L. Jackson. It's not Mississippi Burning, but it was another movie that came out around the same time, and I think it had All Right guy. Matthew McConaughey is the lawyer, and it was a John Grisham novel, and Samuel L. Jackson has kind of made him a star, I think. He has a very, very famous line where he's testifying, yes, I think I hope they die and I hope they burn in hell or whatever, and everybody remembers that line. But that was not the line that really affected me personally about that movie. The prior scene, before that big final courtroom scene, was him and Matthew McConaughey talking quietly in a jail cell, and him talking about, Matthew McConaughey saying, I'm a good person. I just look at you and I see a man. And he said, no, you don't. You look at me and you see a black man. And you look at me differently. And I was a teen when I saw that, and it made me look inward. And it made me think about how I look at the world. And it made me change as a person. Sports doesn't do that as a general rule. Sports can inspire, but to more greatness of sports and to more greatness of our tribe over your tribe. Movies and TV, they can entertain, they can enlighten, they can inform, they can make us better. And I don't think sports as a general rule does that. I think sports, as part of my net negative, if anything, keeps us even keel and has a lot of negatives with it as well. But that's just me. Next up, on a smaller scale, what about the video game industry? Consumers of all ages willing to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to be entertained by Xbox, PlayStation, etc. To what benefit to humanity? Isn't this kind of an electronic version of pro sports consumption? I know there are differences, but again, what's the net positive? Dude, the video game industry is a cesspool. The video game, if you want it, I don't know if I'd make it quite as strongly, because I worked in it, for many, many years. It put us where we are in our life trajectory today. And I guess to be fair, the vast majority of people have no idea what Gamergate is, right? But the video game industry brought us Gamergate. And the video game, I had already left the video game industry by the time Gamergate came out, but I still had friends and I still knew people, and I was still on private message boards from industry professionals who were pro Gamergate, and that was disgusting. And just the existence of Gamergate almost undoes anything positive about whatever, not the sport, about the industry. And then never mind the fact how incredibly abusive it is. I know. It was abusive to me, and it made me abusive to my employees too. So yeah, don't get me started on the video game industry. It doesn't have quite the same ratio as sports, but it's closer to that than it is to theater and film and all the rest of it. Next up, My last example involves the gaming industry, not board gaming. The gaming industry, not board or video game. The very lucrative business of legalized gambling. Net negative? You better believe it. Jeez Louise. Talk about a societal net negative. From slot machines in Vegas to the lotto tickets you buy down at the local 7-Eleven. It's all garbage. It is a huge net negative. It destroys so many lives. And we just let it go, and it's just part of our culture. Yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible. Everything about it is terrible. I put it in the same realm as sports, quite frankly, in terms maybe even worse, probably even worse. But yeah, the existence of other bad things does not suddenly make a bad thing a good thing. Just because you found things that are even worse than sports, I don't think invalidates my point that sports are still overall a net negative. Anyway, I don't mean to sound critical. I do agree with many of your points as it relates to pro sports. And college? What about the disproportionate rise in college tuition over the last 40 years? See, now that's another, that's a disease and symptom. It is ridiculous. It is tantamount to Roman era, hey, the only way you can get ahead is by signing up to be a gladiator slave so you can make enough money for your family. And today we've got kids growing up in impoverished circumstances where your only way out is to try to become a sports star so you can get that to that college tuition when in fact all college should be free. Like it is in the rest of the frickin' world. If we were younger, another reason to go. Man, the first time.
Oh, remember when we went to Copenhagen and they were pitching you and they're like, we've got free maternal leave, we've got free education, we've got free this, that, and something else. And I'm like, I really wish I had wanted kids and didn't already have the education I wanted.
Yeah.
Because, oh my gosh.
American culture is just broken on so many levels. Sports is just one facet of it. And honestly, actually, it's interesting. What was the ancient Romans? Bread and circus. Let's not fix the problems for the people. Let's just put on really great spectacles so they can have a great time. Watching gladiators kill each other and watching, they would flood the Colosseum and literally recreate ancient sea battles. Again, more violence is entertainment. Mm-hmm. And let's do all of that because that's cheaper and easier than actually making their lives better. And that was happening in ancient Rome, and it's still happening today because we put just as much time on the evening news with professional and college level sports as we do with truly important things that matter. Why? Because the American society just gets everything wrong. That's not true. It gets a lot of things right, but it gets a lot of stuff wrong. As for professional sports, I'm becoming less and less interested in teams I used to faithfully follow. These days, I look forward to watching things like the Tour de France and the Olympics. But even they are becoming less tolerable because of all the hype, marketing, and tribalism goes on there, and local community college sports. Honestly, the best sports you can be into are the touch football games you play with your friends on the weekend in your backyard.
Yep.
That's the best use for sports right there.
Yep.
Kids
Building community.
Yes, there you go. And the rest of it, it should never have gone beyond that. Okay, number 8. Would you ever consider getting a couple of small goats? Whoa, whiplash.
Yes,
okay.
Let's talk about that.
We had them when we were younger, and the females were generally clean, friendly, and easy to take care of. Just thought the chickens could use some company. The pooches would have someone else to play with, and you could keep your grass and weeds trimmed naturally.
Well, I would certainly consider that, but I would consider sheep before goats. My sister had a couple of goats, probably 10 years ago, 5 years ago,
sure.
something. Yeah, and the boy was absolutely disgusting, boy goat, and in fact did impregnate his mother, and, they had a
fun goat times.
A mutant come out of that. I don't know if it was a mutant. I think it was another girl goat, but that wasn't good.
No.
But yeah, they were just hard, and I think eventually they got eaten by coyotes or something because they live out in the wilderness. But so I think maybe not goats. Mm-hmm. Although my grandparents had goats and they would milk them and they would make goat cheese, and so there is this kind of fondness in my ancestral memory for goats, and maybe that's why my sister tried them too. I don't know, but I do like sheep.
All right.
I do like sheep.
Someday.
Yep.
Number 9. My last contribution to the Richard and Jen Q&A was inspired by a recent listener of your podcast that came up with a this or that. So the following we'll simply call this, that, or the other. Okay, honey pie. You're having breakfast. Pancakes, French toast, or waffles?
Waffle.
And I don't know why waffles get 3 asterisks.
Oh, maybe that's his choice.
Yeah. I might have, right. So, you're planning a short
Was that yours? Are those your choices?
No.
Oh.
Just copy and paste them. I'm assuming you're right. Must be him.
Okay.
And yeah, easily waffles. Because they're crunchy.
Yeah, crunchy.
Soft on the inside, crunchy on the outside.
Love that. And
Gotta
they've
love
got
it.
little pockets for butter.
Yep.
and what have ya.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Waffles every step of the way. Good waffles.
Yeah, good. Not
Eggos,
Yes.
but good homemade, waffles definitely. You're planning a short vacation. Mountains for hiking and climbing, oceans for sailing, scuba diving, forests for RV camping and trails.
Ocean.
Oh wait, we did this wrong. This, that, or the other. Or no, okay, let's rank them all. Waffles number 1, we both agree.
Yep.
Pancakes or French toast number 2.
I just made some French toast. That was pretty good, wasn't it? But I've probably made French toast twice in 30 years. So probably pancakes.
I would go with pancakes too.
Yeah.
I've had some bad French toast run-ins when my mom made French toast out of rye bread. Oh, oh my.
You enjoyed that cinnamon toast I made just recently.
Yeah, that was good.
A couple weeks ago.
But I don't think it would have been better than if you'd made pancakes, quite frankly.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. Alrighty. Okay, so ranking them. The forest for RV camping and trails, the ocean for sailing and scuba snorkeling, the mountains for hiking and climbing. Number 1.
Ocean.
Ocean for sailing and number 2.
Forest.
Alrighty. And number 3. Mountains.
Yeah.
Okay. So, don't care for the hiking and the climbing, huh?
I don't climb. And I enjoy the hiking, but you can do hiking anywhere.
Yeah.
I like looking
But the
at mountains.
views!
I love looking at mountains, but I actually don't like driving in mountains, which I've certainly definitely noticed
Yes, on this trip, definitely,
recently.
definitely.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. I would put forest at the top. I like forest very much.
You
And
do.
ocean number 2 and mountains number 3.
Yes.
I keep wanting us to buy a house in the woods, and Jen
Oh.
says, "No, there's no sun."
No.
Like, oh, there's sun. It's dappled through the trees.
We're not doing that. I can't. I can't live that way.
Alrighty. You want to exercise: running and walking, swimming, or bicycling.
Oh, I used to love running. And I currently love walking. When we lived in Malta, I tried to take up swimming. We were right across the street from a ocean, and still didn't do that much.
Yep.
So I'm gonna go running, cycling, swimming.
I would go swimming. I do love to swim, and I'm really good at it.
You are.
I'm
yes.
I'm an excellent swimmer. So I do like swimming, and I guess walking, because running is just hard. There's nothing fun there. And cycling would be my number 1 because I love cycling,
Look,
but like I
there's
said, I literally can't do it. We talked about that earlier.
There's a raven getting into our neighbor's.
Uh-oh. Do we need to go take care of that, do you think? Are they around?
Well, he was just reading a book there.
All right, we're going to pause for a second, folks. Joys of life on the road.
Yeah, we're good neighbors.
That thing was huge.
It was huge.
It was ridiculous. But it's gone now. Okay, so what was next? Swimming. So cycling would be number 1, but it has to be number 3 because of my knee. Retired life in the U.S., the U.K., or Malta / Portugal.
I was just reading an article about Portugal and several.
Portugal's number 1 easily. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm interrupted. Yeah. What did the article say?
The article said that there are so many Americans now. It's 30% of the people that are applying for the golden visas.
Yeah, are going to Portugal.
Are going to Portugal and and Spain and a couple of other countries, and it's actually pricing the locals out of being able to afford housing.
Oh, that's not good.
Because of course we can afford 100,000 whatever. It's cheap to us, but 100,000 to them is like 5 years of-
Yeah.
So
Because of monetary value, yeah.
Yep. So I feel now a little bit awful about foreign retirement.
That's a good point.
But we do already own our house in the UK, so certainly UK. And I think unless we get socialized medicine, I am not comfortable retiring.
Oh, yeah,
US.
U.S. is at the bottom of the list,
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah.
There's no upside to it whatsoever.
Well, yes, there is. There's
that?
lots of good things about the United States.
Enough for the purposes of retirement?
No, I'm just.
That's what I'm saying.
you're saying-
Within the confines of this, yes, there
Okay.
are many wonderful things about America. Definitely.
So, and then looking at Malta or Portugal, that's makes me feel a little bit bad. And
That's
so-
a good point. I had not thought about that. Because, my gut response is instantly Portugal. Because it's such
Great
a
climate.
progressively forward country.
Yep, great climate.
Yep, and an amazing climate, wonderful people. I mean, Paulo.
Yeah. Has he personally invited us to come live in his country?
Probably, yes. More than once,
So
I'm
we've
sure.
been invited by a native, so
Yep.
it's okay for us. But and Malta, same thing. I mean,
Yeah, Malta was nice.
Remember Malta? Even in the 6 years that we were there, the real estate prices went through the
Yeah,
roof.
that's an interesting point. So I guess because of that, like you said, I guess we go UK, and then Portugal, and then Malta, and then the US. Alrighty, best things about living in Washington State: climate and natural beauty, the vibe or culture, or the food, and by which we mean regional architecture, berries, seafood, etc.
Agriculture, not architecture.
Did I say architecture?
You did.
I'm a fool.
That's all right. I think for me, I've always been proud, if you will, that Seattle and the Pacific Northwest are progressive.
Yes.
And cool.
Yes.
And all of that. I love that people put signs in their driveways, the ones that you've seen that, we stand for diversity, we stand for Black Lives Matter, and they're not afraid to put a sign in their yard saying all these wonderful things.
Yep.
I love that.
Yep.
So I think that's probably the vibe he's talking about.
Yeah, I would say so.
But I was proud to say I was from Seattle, living overseas, knowing that was kind of the way Seattle is perceived.
So is that your number one then? Over the climate and natural beauty?
I mean, it's all good, and I love gardening, so it's all good. The best thing about living in Washington, I'm gonna go climate and natural beauty.
All right.
Although the climate kind of sucks. Yeah. Natural beauty.
I would go with the vibe, culture, and then climate, natural beauty, and then the food. Yeah, I mean, I don't like seafood at all. Yeah. So.
I do.
Yep.
I love the seafood.
Alrighty, and that was it for Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. You kept us going.
Yeah.
Single-handedly. But now we're moving on to Joshua, who has been a bit sporadic on social media, but notice that I haven't tweeted since the end of 2022. Have I officially left Twitter? Yes, I have, Joshua. I think I talked about that earlier. It's just, I forget what it was. After Elon bought it, I was like, okay, maybe people will be wrong. Oh, no, boy, they're not wrong at all. Oh, geez. And I don't remember if it was when they disbanded they had an internal council for how to resolve issues, or when they stopped. When I think it might have been when they said, okay, we're going to allow COVID disinformation, because people should hear both sides. The truth and the lie, disguised as the truth. And I think it was that when they did that, like, okay, I refuse to stay on this, because every time I tweet anything, I'm just helping. I'm perpetuating this, and I don't want to be a part of this because it's disgusting. And never mind the fact that it's not like it brought anything good into my life at all. I'm happier for not being on that site, and as would every other person if they were to leave it. With a few exceptions here and there, because it can be a source for good and all of that too, but still, Elon's doing everything he can to make sure it's not. Okay, Kevin says, thank you for the explanation of your feelings about sports. Boy.
Sports.
Bring up sports, and people will talk about sports. All right, I myself enjoy sports, but agree there are people that can't handle it, and tribalism can be way too much at times. The stories of life change is amazing to hear, though, and the hope it can give people. If you want to cry, just Google some Make-A-Wish sports stories. Yeah, that's fantastic. When I talk about sports, I'm not talking about the individuals. I'm talking about sports as a societal influencer. It's obviously you give a whole bunch of people you give a whole ton of money to somebody for carrying a ball from one side of a lawn to another, and some of them do good things with that money, and that's fantastic. Alrighty. One comment I always dislike is when people bring up the salaries of athletes. Oopsie, I just did it. Remembering billionaires are paying them. I will never fault someone for trying to earn more salary from billionaires. I agree, I wish wealth was shared more, but I commend athletes that have found a way to make millions from billionaires. They're not making the millions from billionaires. They're making millions from the fans. They're making millions from the taxpayers who subsidize the existence of the teams and their stadiums and all the rest of it. The billionaires are still billionaires. The billionaires wouldn't be doing it if it didn't make them even richer. That's the reality of it. It's not the I'm sorry at least that's my opinion. I could be wrong. Have I ever thought about the salaries like that? No, obviously I disagree with that when it boils right down to it. The billionaires would not be backing these things if it didn't make them more money in the end. Of course, there are exceptions to that. I know there are some billionaires who do it as a loss leader because they love the sport so much. But no, by and large, the billionaires, FIFA is making plenty of money. The Olympic commissions, all of them are making more money than they're losing, and it's the fans who are paying those millions and millions of dollars, not the billionaires. The billionaires are just only ever get richer. Otherwise, they wouldn't be billionaires. Okay, hey, that's it, except for doggos. And Jeff says, Betsy is the white one with the eyebrow. Kaiser is the adorable brindle. Oh, very happy.
Look at that big
That's Betsy.
smile.
Betsy is very happy. Who wouldn't love Betsy? Look at how happy Betsy.
Oh.
And Grindel is Kaiser. Betsy and Kaiser.
Very nice.
Yep. They are so wonderful.
Yep. Love
And look at that.
them. Yeah.
Okay.
Big good nose nozzle picture.
Big schnozzle picture. And then finally, circle back around. Spoilers. Honey, the 3 things. Folks, get out now if you have not watched season 3 of Picard, or any of Picard, because maybe we'll talk about season 1 and 2 as well. And but before you go, think of some questions to send to questions@raw.com. Have a nice day. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye. Okay, Annie Pie. You can say anything you want about season 3 of Picard. What are the 3 things that make it better than seasons 2 and 1?
Okay, well, I liked that the band got back together.
Yes.
I liked having Ensign Rolaren back on the show and finding out what she had ended up doing with her life, because she just sort of disappeared.
See, I mean, that's part of the band getting back together.
I know, but she is not traditional Starfleet.
Well,
Never was.
no, but she was a regular on the show.
I know, but
She was originally going to be, the Major Kira in Deep Space Nine. That was originally going to be her, but Michelle Forbes turned it down because she didn't want to be typecast forever as, Angry Bajorn lady.
okay. Well, still, it was nice to see her. I'm glad that they didn't just bring back the big stars.
All right. Well, then you're going to have to come up with 4 things.
Okay.
So, what's your third thing?
Okay, the third thing is that I think it's kind of interesting that Starfleet is having a comeuppance, that they've made this virus to control the shapeshifters.
Yeah.
And now the shapeshifters are coming for them.
Oh, that, yeah. Because obviously you're right, that's a good point. I didn't even think about it. That is very Star Trek. About, hey, look, we thought we were doing the right thing installing this new puppet dictator in this South American country. And who knew in 30 years that it would lead to all of this or that or the other. Yeah. Or, backing the Shah in Iran or whatever. Yeah, you're right. That's a really good point.
Yep.
Boy, I feel silly. They really haven't played up for it. They've only just kind of mentioned it in passing. Maybe, there's still like 2 more episodes, I think, so maybe it'll become more.
It's when
it's
the,
a really
when the
good
thing
point.
comes out of her hand or whatever,
The other thing.
About it. Yeah. That thing
Yeah,
talked
yeah.
a lot about that.
Yeah.
So
That's a good point.
That is really interesting, because oftentimes we never see the results of Starfleet policies, or how their interference has been an asset or a detriment.
Yeah.
So I think that's really interesting.
That's cool. And that's certainly something. The first 2 seasons of Star Trek. I mean, the second season of Picard, especially.
Yeah.
Second season didn't have anything to say about anything. It was just like, let's just go around and do some random stuff.
Yep.
For 10 episodes.
And then let's see. Another thing that I'm really liking about it
I like that. That's a good one.
is, I think maybe seeing Picard in a not all-powerful god role. Mm-hmm. He's more of a guest wherever he's going, and he can shake his charisma and get a lot of stuff done, but it's kind of nice that things don't all happen easily for him anymore. I guess that's just a progression of his character and now how he's more in retirement.
But I would say that's part and parcel of the whole series. That's not unique to season 3 necessarily.
I don't know. He seems like he's gotten everything he's needed up to this point.
Yeah.
And he certainly has still gotten everything he's needed.
Yes. Well, I mean, but obviously, the main thing you're thinking about is in the Nebula, the showdown between him and Riker, and Riker arguably being right, and you've killed us all, Jean-Luc. Get off my bridge, and all that. You're talking about that he's not infallible.
Yeah, but no, I'm thinking about just everything that they had to kind of swindle their way onto a ship, and then if it hadn't been for 7 of 9, they wouldn't have been able to get out to wherever it was to rescue Beverly and the kid.
Yeah, but I mean, I would say that was true for the first season. I mean, the first season, he went to Starfleet. They couldn't help him, so he had to find Rafi and got Luis. I can't remember his name. The
kid.
The captain. The who ended up staying in the past in the second season. Even though it was terrible.
Yeah, him. Yep.
Yeah. So he had to circumvent the law and all that.
Yeah, I guess it just still seemed like it came pretty easy.
Okay.
But how about you?
The fact they aren't going to the past and just doing a retread of Voyage Home. I think the third season is fine, but I don't think it's great by any stretch of the imagination. I don't even want to say it out loud, because if I mention something, you'll become very aware of it, and it'll bother you as much as it bothers me. So I'm just not even going to say the thing that I really dislike about the production, let's say, of the show. It's just like, it's annoying. In the same way that many people got annoyed by, remember the Star Trek movies with the new young cast of Kirk and all that, how there was like lens flares all the time?
Yeah.
And a lot of people hated that. It never bothered me. There's a similar thing with this season that I just can't stand, and it's just omnipresent, and it just makes me I'm not enjoying watching any of this because I just don't like what I'm seeing physically on my TV screen or our computer monitor because we're on the road. But it's fine. I wouldn't say it's been great. It's just been, I would say the first season, it's as good as the first season, but not better than the first season. And the second season was just literally the worst Star Trek has ever been. So yeah, I don't necessarily have three things, other than just like, okay, they're not doing anything they did in the second season now, which was good. But I mean, the reunion stuff is nice, but that doesn't even say, oh, it's Geordi. Oh, it's Beverly. I was totally fine with Patrick Stewart's, no, this is not a reunion show. This is something new. I mean, I'm just like, hey, new and different is good. That's cool. So, I mean, the reunion thing doesn't really do anything for me. I did your point about how it's actually got, there's something underpinning. It's really Star Trek-y in that there's actually real meat under what's going on that is reflective of the real world. That's cool. I hadn't thought about that. Very, very well observed. So I guess I've got one thing.
Okay.
All right. And now, folks, that you made it through this spoiler-filled section, we are out of here. And how long was this? We had, less than 2 hours in and out. This was much shorter than the 3 and 4 hour episodes. And that's on you. More questions to questions@rahdo.com. And we will talk to you all again next month. Have a very, very nice day. Talk to you later. So long.
And bye-bye.
Bye.